Okay, welcome back. We're on page 144 talking about this little diagram here, the 4 stages of the selection process. So what they're basically saying is you need to start with some sort of a planning process. Typically it's like a steering committee, or perhaps in your organization you really do have a project management office, a PMO. But either way is you start with some sort of a scenario that says, let's look at all these projects and let's pick which one. Okay. And again, we're going to talk about the criteria a little bit later. Another way of looking at the next phase would be what they call the business area analysis. And this basically identify those key processes that directly contribute to the strategic plan. So if you got 5 or 6 projects out there, which ones of these have a direct impact on the strategic plan? That would be a good next thing to check out. Then is defining the scope. This is that triple constraint kind of a thing. The project scope, the benefits, and the constraints. And then lastly is, okay, I need to allocate. I need to approve the project and allocate resources and start the work. So it starts off with some steering committee saying, yeah, that looks like a good project. And then someone says, okay, let's do a little bit of work here and produce some documentation. And then, okay, let's do a little bit of planning here to figure out what the scope is and what the budget is. And then finally, the project gets approved and you get to spend money and you get to hire people and you get to work on it. So it's kind of a step-by-step process. It doesn't necessarily need to be in a pyramid like they have in the book, but step-by-step. One of the key things we talked about is that business area analysis. So we're going to talk about that again. So aligning IT and business strategies. This section on page 144 sounds incredibly simple, doesn't it? But in reality, not so much. Basically, you have to start with the business. In other words, what are the business needs of something? You don't do it the other way around, okay? I've heard people do this. They'll be reading some magazine, they're stuck on an airport and they're, reading the in-flight magazine, and they have an article about blockchain. So they come back to the office and say, we need to put blockchain technology in our products. And everybody looks around and goes, okay. That's not the way it works. You don't start with the technology and say, wait, where can we use this? That's not the way it works. You start with the business needs. What are we trying to do? Oh, okay, now we need to find some technology that help us do that. But you don't start with the technology. Okay. I think I've said that a lot. As I have said repeatedly, there has to be a valid business need in order to do something. You can't just do something because. Okay. So, the the techniques you use, it could be something as simple as some financial thing. I've got 5 or 6 projects laid out there. And now that I've determined that these things all kind of align with my businesses, maybe it'll be like a simple return on investment or net present value or something. Something that will give me a way to rank the systems and say, okay, I'm going to go with that project before I go to this project. Okay. The Walmart inventory control is a good example of how this kind of works. So their big, long-term strategic goal is they want to be the low-cost, leader in retail sales. That's their goal. And so to accomplish that goal, they do multiple projects. And so one would be, okay, we're going to use RFID tags on our shipments to verify where things are. We're going to have, one might be, we're going to have a web portal where you can order things and come to the store and pick them up. One, of course, is their entire supply chain management. They have excellent supply chain management. They have these contracts with these companies, and quite frankly, it's almost predatory, monopolistic, but that's a discussion for some other class, where they go in and say, sure, Coca-Cola, we'd love to put your Coke products in our store, but you're going to have to sell them to us less than what you sell them to everyone else. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, back to the story. The idea is they have multiple projects over time. The first one, the one that probably would impact them the most, would be getting their supply chain management all in place. That's a big project. I don't know how long it took them, probably years, to get it all squared away. And then they started adding on, tweaking and adding on and doing some more things. So they picked the big winner up front. So there's an awful lot of IT related projects inside their thing. I mean, the supply chain management thing they have an intranet set up so all the vendors can talk. When Walmart sets like reorder points for things that change over time, they have seasonal ones, they have permanent ones, and these vendors get to see this in advance and ramp up production to be able to produce however many whatever it is they're trying to sell. And so there's an awful lot of IT things in there, plus cool things like RFID tags on shipments and things of that nature. So on page 146 they finally get to the methods, 5 examples, common techniques for doing project selection. The first one is kind of a simple one. I'm selecting this project because it meets the broad organizational needs. Okay. And so an example would be, which one of these projects is going to be the best for improving customer satisfaction? That'd be a good one. So it's just subjective. You look at this one and go, oh, here's a good one. Just go through them and say, which one of these are going to meet this broad goal? Okay. Again, somewhat subjective, but that's okay. Another one would be to put these things in categories. Like, which one of these is solving a problem? Which one of these is exploiting an opportunity? Which one of these is required by law? And so those maybe get into different categories. Let's say you had several that were fixing problems. Well, okay, then you could kind of rank those in between. Here's several that take, to exploit an opportunity that shows up. Well, then you categorize those. Now, and I'll tell you one of the weird ones. I've been in IT long enough to know that one of the weirdest things that happens is mergers and acquisitions. Your company gets bought out, or perhaps you buy out a company. So now we have different corporate systems for payroll. We have different corporate systems for email. We have different corporate systems for everything. And so there'll be a directive that comes down from above that says, ye shall institute this particular IT project. And you're going, okay. So it doesn't matter where it is in how well it serves the business needs. It's a directive. You're gonna. And also in that category would be things like when the law changes. So, for example, when the HIPAA requirements came out for health insurance, if you worked at a hospital or a health insurance company and there's a new law, you went, wow, okay, I guess I'm going to be developing some new software now. So you don't really have much of a choice. Okay, let's continue. So another one is just some of those financial, economic kind of things, net present value. I assume you guys understand the concept of the present value of money, that $5 today is worth more than $5 tomorrow kind of thing. Assuming that you understand all that, here's an example of somebody doing a calculation to come up. So they have a return on investment. That's a cool way of looking at it. A return on investment is at 112%. Or a payback period. It's going to take about a year to pay this thing back. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is basically just a simple payback period. Here's my benefits, here's my costs, and in theory there will be some period of time in there where they cross over, and therefore that's how long it takes. I did a project a million years ago, a project at Fort Hood. It's kind of a weird project, but let me just tell you the story. It has to do with directives. Okay, so during a short period of time, back in the 70s, somebody decided that we were running out of natural gas. Okay, it turned out not to be true, but that's not really the point. Congress then said, ye shall not produce any more cooling and heating power plants using natural gas. Can't do it. Okay, so at Fort Hood, we were building one of those energy plants, and the fuel we chose was diesel fuel because natural gas wasn't available to us. Okay, so we built this thing and it was using diesel fuel. And then finally they figured out that it was a complete hoax, that we were not running out of natural gas, and that was a stupid idea. So I got in charge of putting it together, a project that was going to retrofit those systems to burn natural gas. Okay, and so I calculated the payback period, how long it would take for me to go in there and pipe natural gas and swap out some of the controls, and the payback period was 4 months. That's the shortest payback period that we had ever had for any project ever in the history of Fort Hood. A 4-month payback period. Yeah, it could pay for itself several times, 3 times over in 1 year. Yeah. Okay. Back. The other one is a weighted scoring. You know, this is essentially how I grade your work. You know, a test is worth 5 points, a quiz is worth 5 points, and this is worth so many points, and this is worth so many points. And so you come up with some sort of a subjective criteria, and then you assign weights to which one you think is more important, line your projects all up, and then whichever one comes up with the weighted score, that's the one you do first. It's kind of simple. There's a diagram there that basically shows how that works. It's again, some sort of a criteria that you come up, and then again, this could be subjective, it could be, you know, very simple. You know, strong internal sponsor, has customer support, blah, 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 blah. And so you just give weights for these things. You know, the most important one is supports the key business projects. And so you just score these things, and then whichever one comes up, looks like project number 2 is the one we ought to do. Okay, that's a cool way of doing it. And the last one they talk about is balanced scorecard. And again, if you're in the business world, you've heard of these terms. If not, basically it's kind of sort of like the SWOT analysis, kind of, sort of, almost, kind of. Basically, the balanced scorecard is a way to identify all these things, but instead of just talking about them, you actually come up with the action plans to do it. My balanced scorecard is, I need to do this, 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 and this in order to balance the sheet, so to speak. Okay. On page 155, they talk about developing the project charter. Okay. So the book says, well, this is it formally recognizes the existence of the project. Okay. In reality, if you translate that and read a couple more sentences in that paragraph, you'll find out what it really, really, really means. What it really means is your project's been approved. Okay, you probably don't have the authority to do every single project because it costs money. So this is the one that says, somebody signs on the bottom line saying, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can spend money. Here's your plan. It's going to cost me so many $1,000s to do this. This project is approved. So it's the approval document. I don't know why they don't just say that, but doggone it. Okay, so the charter. The charter basically is broken up into several points or sections, as you might want to call it. There's going to be a statement of work. And the statement of work is basically sort of like that elevator pitch. This project is designed to do, and it should be relatively short. I mean, if it's more than if more than an elevator pitch, about this much on the document, then you're probably putting too much into it. The business case, a very short justification of why we're doing this and why it's a good idea. Essentially, how you got to the idea that this was a good idea. That didn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. Some sort of, if there's some agreements, either some agreements internally, okay, I'm going to borrow Bob for 6 months, or maybe there's some agreements with outside people you're going to have. You might want to list those. The corporate environment where you're going to work, how that part's going to work. We talked to death about that in the previous one. And all the plans and policies and all the things that have to kind of go along with that. There's an example of one, although I may have to zoom in a little bit to be able to see it. So here's the first chunk of it. So here's the project. And basically they just go through and, here's the milestones and the budget and who's the manager and what the objectives are and success criteria. I like that. Here's all the approaches and the roles and all the rest of those kinds of things. Okay. So, continuing on, they talk about on page 156, developing a project management plan, a PMP, a project management plan. Okay. Actually, we're getting pretty doggone close to the 15-minute mark, so we'll pause here and pick that up again in just a few.